Rick, a washed-up 32-year-old office loser, decides he's gonna be a badass adventurer. Like, seriously, dude's got more years on him than most adventurers have teeth, but he thinks he's hot shit, but he is just a ugly, pathetic loser. He's been training with the world's strongest party, but let's be real, he's probably just the water boy. Now this old fart's out there, stumbling around, facing off against monsters that could eat him alive. He thinks he's some kind of hero, but he's just a joke. A pathetic joke. All he's got is a bit of luck and a sense of humor that's drier than the desert. The story begins and we see Rick was a total wreck, all beat up and bruised after some crazy training session. He thought he was gonna die, but his mentors were all, "Nah, dude, you are good." They were hyped, acting like he was some kind of hero. Sure, the praise was nice, but he needed a medic, like, yesterday. Adventuring was for young kids, not old farts like him. But Rick was a stubborn idiot who thought he could still cut it. He went to the front desk to sign up for the E-rank exams, and the receptionist's jaw dropped. Turns out, they knew each other from way back. Rick had just quit his job to become some kind of hero. The receptionist was like, "WTF? What? Dude," at the time, but now she was even more shocked. Most people his age were living normal lives, not risking their necks for a bit of treasure. Curious about what he'd been up to, she asked him what he'd been doing. Rick told her he'd been training his ass off in the mountains with some weirdo mentors. It had been tough, but he thought he was ready to face whatever crap came his way. Just then, the guild's usual drunkard walks up to the front desk and starts flirting with the receptionist. When she tries to decline because she is still obviously working, the guy doesn't take no for an answer. He starts getting rough with the receptionist, and that's when Rick decides to step in. He pulls the guy aside and lightly taps his stomach with enough force to knock him out instantly. The receptionist apologizes for the inconvenience the drunk guy caused him, but Rick says it's fine since he used to work as a receptionist as well. He still doesn't understand why the guild thinks it's a good idea to serve alcohol in here. After Rick receives his exam number, he heads outside where a maid named Reincarnation greets him. She asks if Rick is done with his registration, and Rick confirms, thanking her for waiting for him. While he says this, he's intently staring at Reincarnation's big milkers. She calls him out on this, so Rick tries to change the subject, talking about how excited he is for the exam. Back inside the guild, the other adventurers are stunned by the clear handprint left on the drunk guy's armor. This armor is made of dense steel, so whoever did this must be extremely strong. Just then, two adventurers walk in and recognize the drunk guy from a mugshot they saw recently. His name is Donald, and he's an A-rank adventurer wanted for multiple assaults. The receptionist realizes that Rick must have been the one to take down Domal. If Rick can handle an A-rank adventurer, he may be overqualified for the tasks ahead. Meanwhile, Rick undergoes a physical exam. His height is recorded at about 5'8". The physicians are surprised that a 30-year-old pathetic loser like Rick is taking this test. Following the physical, all examinees are led to a room where they're instructed to place their hands on a crystal ball to measure their mana. The ball glows according to the level of mana each person possesses. Others touch the ball, getting varied results, the highest being AC. When it's Rick's turn, the orb barely lights up, leading the examiner to give Rick an F on his mana exam. The other candidates mock Rick for his low score as he leaves. However, as the next candidate approaches, the orb spontaneously shatters. The next test was stupidity as they had to hit a stupid slime bag as hard as they could. Rick remembered his crazy mentor telling him he had to break a gold slime bag with his bare hands to be a real adventurer. At first, Rick was like, yeah, right, but then he saw his mentor smash one with one punch. So, he trained like a madman, punching that bag 10,000 times a day. Now it was time for the real deal. One by one, the other candidates stepped up and showed off their strength. Then, the second son of the Diarmuid family, some 15-year-old brat, was called up. Rumor had it he was a magic prodigy, stronger than most C-rank adventurers. The kid stepped up and cast a spell called Hell's Flame. Everyone was expecting a huge fireball, but nope. He shot a tiny little flame at the bag. It was pathetic. But the judges were all a bunch of idiots as they tell him that it is amazing. Rick was like, what the heck? That kid's fireball was weak sauce compared to my teacher's. Maybe the kid was just holding back, trying to not blow up the whole testing area. As the tests kept going, it was finally Rick's turn. He walked up to the slime bag, ready to show them what he was made of. But before he could even swing, the examiner stopped him. The examiner was like, you are over 30? Seriously? You are too old for this. You failed the mana test, so just give up. Don't embarrass yourself. The guy was a total jerk. Rick felt a wave of doubt. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was too old for this. But then he remembered all the hard work he'd put in. He'd punched those slime bags till his knuckles were bloody. He wasn't going to give up now. He took a deep breath and swung at the bag. Boom! The bag exploded into a million pieces. Damn! Even Rick was surprised. He hadn't expected that. The Diamond kid was fuming. He was supposed to be the star, but Rick stole the show. But the kid was cocky. He thought he'd win the next round with his fancy defensive magic. Wrong. Rick blocked the kid's strongest spell without even breaking a sweat. The examiner was impressed, but he was still being a jerk. He told Rick to use a stronger spell, like he wasn't already giving it his all. Rick, however, explains that he doesn't know any spells above the first order level. He admits that his magical abilities are limited to just the first order spells, but reassures the examiner that he is doing his best with the skills he has. The examiner is shocked by this. Considering Rick's impressive control over his mana, the examiner expected him to know more powerful spells. Rick responds confidently, saying that he believes his first order spells will be enough to deal with anything the examiner can throw at him. The examiner takes this as a challenge and is insulted by Rick's confidence. He decides to teach Rick a lesson and prepares to cast a fifth order spell, something much more powerful than anything Rick has seen. As he starts casting the spell, a huge shockwave bursts from the cyclone he summons, sending ripples of force through the air. The impact is so strong that the shockwave travels all the way through the kingdom, and even a knight across town hears the enormous sound. A few minutes later, Sylvester, a senior member of the guild, arrives at the exam center, wondering what all the commotion is about. He is told that an F-rank adventurer, Rick, not only destroyed a slime bag with his bare hands but also managed to block the fifth order spell using only basic first order defense magic. Sylvester is in disbelief and thinks someone is joking with him, but the person speaking is completely serious. Meanwhile, Rick is busy taking the written part of the exam. He feels confident in his knowledge and believes he will do very well. After finishing the test, he takes a break with his friend Reinette. She asks how the written test went, and Rick proudly tells her that he's certain he will score 100%. After all, he worked for years as a receptionist at the guild, so he's had plenty of time to learn everything needed for this exam. Despite his confidence in the written part, Rick is still unsure if his overall scores will be high enough to pass the whole exam. Reinette asks if he's worried about his practical exam scores, but Rick reassures her that he did well in all the categories. The only problem is that he scored an F in his mana exam, and he isn't sure how much that will hurt his chances of passing. Reinette tries to comfort him, telling him not to worry. She believes all the hard work he did in preparation will make up for it. The little brat, Freed, stormed over to Rick, all red in the face. He was pissed that Rick had done so well on the tests. Rick thought Freed was just lost or something. But no, the kid was crying because Rick had upstaged him. Freed's sister, Angelica, showed up and started yelling at Rick too. She was blaming Rick for making her brother cry. Rick was just trying to explain himself, but they weren't listening. They kept calling him a 30-year-old man like it was some insult. Rick was a bit annoyed, but he wasn't going to let them get to him. He didn't mean to ruin Freed's day, but he wasn't going to apologize for trying his best. Freed was just a spoiled brat who couldn't handle losing. Rick was focused on finishing the exam. He'd worked too hard to let some kid's tantrum get in the way. He was going to prove to everyone that age didn't matter. He was going to show them all that he was a force to be reckoned with. Angelica, furious at Rick, throws her glove at him, unknowingly issuing a formal duel challenge. Rick, unaware of this tradition, picks it up to prevent it from getting dirty. Unfortunately, this act is considered acceptance of the duel. Angelica eagerly sets the terms: the loser will serve the winner for life. She claims she'll enjoy punishing Rick for making her brother cry but insists they follow proper rules. Angelica is a second-class royal knight, which Reinette explains is roughly equivalent to a B-rank adventurer, strong enough to handle huge monsters alone. Rick panics since he's only an F-rank and can't imagine holding back as Reinette suggests. But Reinette reminds him of his rigorous training over the years. As Rick recalls the torturous sessions, he vomits, cursing Reinette for the memories. She reassures him, emphasizing that as a member of the strongest party on the continent, he's far more capable than he realizes. Gathering courage, Rick faces Angelica. She confidently promises to hold back to avoid killing him, then shows off her speed using Blink Step, earning her the nickname Lightspeed Angelica. However, Rick is unimpressed. Her speed is slower than his normal running pace. Dodging easily, Rick begins questioning her reputation. Angelica rationalizes her failure as Rick getting lucky and tries again, only to trip on a rock and unleash unpredictable, chaotic strikes. Rick struggles to dodge the unintended flurry, but Angelica claims she planned it all, determined to increase her speed even further. Using her ultimate technique to move 3 times faster, Angelica still appears slow to Rick. Cautious, he avoids attacking, unsure if she's hiding more tricks. In desperation, Angelica launches one last charge but trips again. This time, Rick punches the ground while attempting to intercept her, leaving a massive hole. Angelica, terrified by the power of his near hit, surrenders immediately, realizing she would have died if the punch had connected. Rick just shrugged off the little brat, freed. He wasn't gonna waste his time with that loser. When the exam results came out, Rick was worried he'd failed, but his ticket lit up blue. He was in. He headed out with Reinette, but then some douchebag named Rasta showed up. This guy was a total tool, all dressed up in fancy clothes and reeking of perfume. He tried to hit on Reinette, asking her to be his second wife. Rick wasn't having it. He told Rasta to back off, saying Reinette was his girlfriend. Rasta laughed at him, calling him a loser F-rank adventurer. He said he'd make Rick pay during the next stage of the exam. Reinette thanked Rick for standing up for her. She actually seemed to like him as she wanted to reveal her plot armor only to Rick whenever she is going to get the chance. Later, Rick met Lynx, a cool B-rank adventurer who was supposed to be his test proctor. But Rasta, being a total jerk, rigged the system to take over. He was out to get Rick, and he was gonna make his life miserable. Reinette warned Rick that Rasta was known for screwing over F-rankers. Now, Rick was in for it. Rasta was about to start messing with the other examinees, freezing them with ice magic. Rick knew he was gonna be next. He was ready to fight back, no matter what it took. Reinette can't understand why Rick is so worried about facing Rasta. She tells him he just needs to beat him. Rick, however, sees it as impossible. Rasta is a highly respected A-rank adventurer, while Rick is stuck at F-rank. To Rick, it feels like a death sentence to even try. But if he backs out, Reinette has promised to triple his already grueling training schedule. Reinette steps in front of Rick, looking him straight in the eye, and asks if he really thinks he's so unskilled. Rick admits he does. He switched to being an adventurer late in life, and people constantly remind him he's too old for the job. Reinette dismisses those comments, telling Rick not to let others' opinions shake his confidence. What matters, she says, is that she believes in him. Even if Rick can't trust himself, Reinette urges him to trust her belief in him. Rick feels encouraged by her words, thanking her for her support. With his spirits lifted, he starts to believe he might stand a chance. Just when things couldn't get any weirder, some creepy kid in a cloak offered Rick a free fortune-telling session. Reincarnation was like, "Dude, that's sketchy," but Rick was too dumb to listen. Next thing they knew, Rick was gone, spoofed away by some weird magic. It turned out the kid was Freed, the same brat who was jealous of Rick earlier. He was laughing his ass off, thinking he was so clever. But Reincarnation wasn't having it. She grabbed him by the neck and squeezed until he spilled the beans. Freed said he could only teleport people a short distance, so Rick was probably nearby. Rick found himself by the river, confused as hell. Before he could figure out what was going on, a bunch of tough-looking guys showed up. They were the Deria family's elite guard, and they were out to beat him up. Rick knew it was Rasta's doing. The elite guard was way stronger than Rick, but he wasn't going to go down without a fight. Just when things were looking bleak, Rick's party members showed up. They looked pissed off, and Rick knew he was in trouble. He quickly lied and said the elite guard was helping him train. One of Rick's party members, Brufston, was ready to join the training. The elite guard leader thought Brufston was just another weakling, but he was about to learn a hard lesson. Brufston blocked a sword strike with his bare hand, shattering the blade like it was nothing. The elite guard was terrified. Brufston praises one of the guards for building up his physical strength but criticizes him for not strengthening his weapon enough to keep it from breaking. Frustrated, the guard decides to fight with his fists. Unfortunately for him, it doesn't go well. Brufston grabs his hand, crushing it until it turns purple. Brufston then calmly assures the man that he'll heal his hand with magic, so there's no need to worry. The leader of the elite guard starts to realize how badly he miscalculated by attacking Rick's group. It's becoming clear that these adventurers are far stronger than they appear. Meanwhile, Mizzet asks Rick if the guards really came to pick a fight with him. When Rick confirms it, Mizzet claims he'll handle things peacefully. However, his idea of peaceful involves pulling out a bizarre weapon called a Super Fire Barrel Mk2 rifle and firing it at the guards, knocking them all to the ground. Rick yells at Mizzet for supposedly killing everyone when he promised to resolve things without violence. But Mizzet insists none of the guards are dead, probably. One of the guards, desperate to turn the tide, grabs Elise, a young member of Rick's party, as a hostage. He thinks he's gained the upper hand but has no idea how big of a mistake he's made. Brufston wants him to let Elise go if he values his life. The guard ignores the advice and even hits Elise to make her stay quiet. That seals his fate. Elise responds by vaporizing him on the spot. The guards were freaking out. The leader realized he'd messed up big time. Turns out, Elise wasn't just some random girl, she was a freaking vampire prodigy and the strongest mage in the world, and she was only 15. And Mizzet, the little dwarf, was a genius inventor who could build crazy tech stuff. Then there was Brufston, the ORC, who was a total beast. Together, they were the Orichurcum Fist, a legendary party of S-rank adventurers. The guards knew they were totally screwed. The leader bailed, but the others were too stupid to run. They got what they deserved. Meanwhile, Rick and Reincarnation found Lynx, all beat up. Rasta had been a total jerk to him, mocking his dream of building a school. He'd beaten Lynx up and told him to forget about helping kids. Rick was furious. He couldn't believe how cruel Rasta was. He knew he had to do something to stop him. It was time to show everyone what he was really capable of. This fuels Rick's anger. While he had been nervous about facing Rasta before, now he's determined to take him down. Before their fight begins, the story shifts to Adolf, a character with a unique ability. Adolf can see the power levels of anyone just by looking at them. He explains the 4 cores of power in this world: strength, dexterity, magic capacity, and magic control. To demonstrate, Adolf scans a random participant in the exam and sees that the person is incredibly weak. Adolf predicts they'll be eliminated by Rasta in no time. When Adolf looks at Rasta, he sees a powerhouse with immense mana capacity, though it strains his eyes to view such strength. But when he glances at Rick, Adolf's ability completely blinds him due to Rick's overwhelming potential. Up in the stands, Rick's former coworker, Alyssa Granger, approaches Reincarnation and introduces herself. She mentions seeing Rick with Reinette the day before and is delighted to hear that Reinette is part of Rick's new party. Reinette invites Alyssa to sit with them to watch Rick's test. Alyssa joins the group but is shocked to see Brufston, an ORC, among Rick's allies. Meanwhile, Mizette notices Alyssa and offers her a seat beside him. Reinette, knowing Mizette's flirtatious tendencies, quickly intervenes to stop him from bothering her. Finally, it was Rick's turn to shine. Reinette was confident he'd ace the test, but Alyssa was worried. She knew Raster was a total jerk who loved picking on weaker adventurers. The fight started, and Raster was all cocky, with his siblings cheering him on. He thought he was invincible, but Rick wasn't fazed. He calmly asked Raster why he became an adventurer. Raster, being the arrogant prick he was, said he only joined for the status. He loved using his A-rank card to bully people. He was a real piece of work. Disgusted by Raster's shallow reasoning, Rick declares he'll never lose to someone like him. Raster starts the fight by casting a low-level ice spell, purposely missing to mock Rick. But Rick stands still, following Reinette's advice to use the first minute of the battle to observe his opponent. Frustrated, Raster ups his game, casting a more powerful fire spell at Rick. The blast hits directly, but when the smoke clears, Rick is completely unharmed. Brufston, watching from the stands, explains to Alyssa that Rick's intense physical training has made him strong enough to withstand such attacks. Brufston reveals that Rick's mana capacity is low because he started adventuring late in life. To compensate, Rick trained rigorously in physical strength, magic control, and dexterity under the guidance of his party members. Rick doesn't realize how powerful he's become because his allies often tricked him into thinking F-rank adventurers were stronger than him. Growing frustrated, Raster unleashes a barrage of elemental attacks, throwing everything he has at Rick. Yet, Rick emerges from the onslaught completely unharmed. Furious, Raster decides to end things with brute force. He strengthens his body with magic and charges at Rick, intending to finish him off with a single punch. Rick, however, counters with his own punch, sending Raster flying across the arena. By observing Raster's movements, Rick realizes the truth: Raster's only advantage is his mana capacity. Beyond that, he's no match for Rick's skill and determination. Rick listens to Raster's shallow reasons for becoming an adventurer and refuses to lose to someone like him. Determined, he prepares to face Raster, who begins the battle by casting a level 1 ice spell. Raster purposely misses, mocking Rick for being too scared to move. However, Rick isn't frozen in fear. He's following Reinette's advice to stay calm and use the first minute of the fight to carefully observe Raster's moves. Raster doesn't wait long to attack again. This time, he casts a level 3 fire spell directly at Rick. The spell impresses Rick due to how quickly Raster executed it, but Rick remains still, continuing to observe. The fire blast hits him head-on. Alyssa, watching from the stands, is alarmed, but to everyone's surprise, Rick emerges from the attack completely unharmed. Brufston reassures Alyssa, explaining that Rick has trained hard to withstand attacks like this. He then gives some context about the 4 cores of power in their world: strength, dexterity, mana capacity, and mana control. Among these, Brufston points out that mana capacity must be cultivated from a young age. Since Rick only became an adventurer at 30, his mana capacity is naturally low. To make up for this, he worked relentlessly to improve his other stats. Brufston further explains how Rick trained. Brufston focused on Rick's physical strength by making him run between villages with 100-kilogram weights strapped to his ankles, while venomous snakes chased him through forests. Mizette, despite being notoriously lazy, committed to teaching Rick mana control so he could master magical defenses. Without this, Rick would have been reduced to ashes in his first few battles. Reinette trained Rick in dexterity, shocking Alyssa, who had assumed Reinette was just a maid. Reinette admits she wears maid outfits simply because she enjoys them. Rick poured every ounce of effort into his training under these 3. Unbeknownst to him, this has already made him as strong as an S-rank adventurer. However, Rick doesn't realize his strength because Brufston tricked him into believing even F-rank adventurers were stronger than him. Back in the arena, Raster continues to insult Rick and Lynx, mocking them for being too old to remain in the adventuring business. He begins casting a flurry of elemental attacks from his skill tree. After unleashing this overwhelming barrage, Rasta smugly assumes Rick must be injured or dead. However, Rick once again emerges completely unscathed, much to the horror of Rasta and his siblings. Frustrated by Rick's resilience, Rasta decides to finish the fight with physical attacks. He strengthens his hands and feet with magic and rushes at Rick. But as Rasta throws a punch, Rick counters with a strike of his own, sending Rasta flying backward. Reinet's advice to watch and learn from Rasta's movements has paid off. Rick now understands that Rasta's only real advantage is his larger mana capacity. Rasta hasn't put in the effort to refine his abilities, making him weaker overall. Although Rasta has the potential to be stronger, Rick realizes that right now, he is the more powerful fighter. Rasta, unwilling to admit defeat, tries to write off Rick's counterpunch as a lucky fluke. Determined to prove himself, Rasta starts chanting for a full incantation spell. The spell looks intimidating, but Rick easily blocks it with one hand and even mocks Rasta for his sloppy execution. Alyssa is shocked that Rick could block such a powerful spell with his low mana capacity. Mizet explains that Rick's training has given him exceptional mana control. Even though Rasta has more mana, Rick can use far less to produce the same effects. This efficiency gives Rick a significant edge in battle. Desperate to prove his superiority, Rasta attempts one final attack. However, Rick moves too fast for him, landing a powerful punch that forces Rasta to activate his iron body defense magic. At this point, Rasta realizes that Rick is far stronger than the average A-rank adventurer. Still, Rasta stubbornly claims Rick has only gotten lucky so far. Rick refuses to be manipulated by Rasta's false confidence. He knows his strength is real and hasn't even used any strengthening magic during the fight. Despite Rasta enhancing himself, Rick has been overpowering him with sheer skill and effort. Out of options, Rasta asks Rick how he became so strong with so little mana. Rick, offended by the implication of trickery, explains his grueling training process. He recalls being thrown into a dragon's lair and told he couldn't leave until he defeated the dragon. He endured countless powerful explosions and swam through swamps filled with monster goo, choking on it repeatedly. Alyssa is stunned by these stories and wonders how Rick could have survived. Brufston explains that Rick didn't survive, not always, at least. Thanks to Brufston's healing magic, Rick could be revived after every fatal incident. This relentless cycle of death and resurrection pushed Rick beyond his natural limits. Rick's allies had little regard for his safety, but their extreme methods paid off. For example, Mizet once pushed Rick off a cliff during training, only for Brufston to revive him. Alyssa and Reinet's training also resulted in countless injuries, but Rick always came back stronger. Rasta doesn't believe Rick's story. Even if such extreme training were possible, why would Rick willingly put himself through it? Rick reveals his dream, to one day kill Kaiser Alcipiat, the world's strongest monster. Rasta laughed his ass off, thinking Rick was crazy for believing in some mythical monster. He called Rick a fool and a dreamer. But Rick didn't care. He had a mission, and he wasn't going to let anyone stop him. Rasta got pissed and decided to end it quick. He cast a powerful spell to trap Rick, then started charging up his strongest attack. He was sure he'd win. But Rick had a trick up his sleeve. He was going to use a simple air shot spell to counter Rasta's attack. Rasta laughed at Rick, thinking he was crazy. But Rick had practiced that spell a million times. He knew it like the back of his hand. When Rasta attacked, Rick blocked it with his air shot. The two spells clashed, and Rasta's spell shattered. He was sent flying, totally humiliated. Everyone was shocked. An F-rank adventurer had just beaten an A-rank. Rick's friends weren't surprised at all. They knew he was capable of amazing things. Rick went to the locker room to celebrate with his friends. Alyssa was impressed, and Rick started to realize how strong he really was. He thanked his friends for all their help, but they told him to forget about it. It was time to party. Before they can leave, Rasta and his siblings enter the room. Rasta, clearly in pain from Rick's punch, stubbornly refuses any treatment. Rick approaches him and offers some honest advice instead of mocking him. Rick explains that his strength comes from focusing on mastering just a few techniques instead of trying to learn everything at once. He tells Rasta that if he wants to improve, he should refine a single skill until it pushes him to his limits. However, Rick says it's up to Rasta to decide if he wants to follow the advice. Surprisingly, Rasta seems humbled by the experience. As he walks past Rick, he quietly promises that when Rick faces his next promotion exam, Rasta will train hard enough to make sure he doesn't lose again. Angelica, one of Rasta's siblings, pauses before leaving to apologize for all the trouble they caused. She then helps Rasta leave the room. With the E-rank exams officially over, the announcer begins calling the names of those who passed. Rick eagerly waits to hear his name. Meanwhile, his friends are already celebrating in anticipation of his success. They're confident there's no way he could fail. When Rick's name is finally called, he passes his exam, though he seems more thoughtful than excited. Reinette notices Rick's calm reaction and asks why he isn't celebrating more. Rick explains that he has a lot on his mind. He recalls a moment from his childhood that set him on the path to becoming an adventurer. When Rick was a child, he read a storybook about a hero named Yamto. In the tale, Yamto battled the ultimate monster, Kaiser Alcipiet, in search of the legendary Akashic records. Although Yamto failed to defeat the monster, he left the Akashic records behind for future adventurers to find. This story inspired Rick to dream of becoming an adventurer just like Yamto. However, Rick's parents had different opinions about his dream. His mother, worried about the dangers of adventuring, gently suggested he consider a safer career. His father, on the other hand, was much harsher. He dismissed Rick's dreams, telling him to get a real job instead of wasting his life chasing fantasies. One day, during a routine checkup, Rick's doctor made a surprising discovery: Rick had an innate skill. These rare abilities are considered incredibly special, making Rick feel like he was destined for greatness, just like Yamto. The doctor warned him, though, that innate skills don't awaken immediately. It would take time before Rick could use his ability. Despite this, Rick was overjoyed. This brought him one step closer to becoming the adventurer he always wanted to be. The next day, Rick was all hyped up, thinking his skill would awaken any minute. But weeks turned into months, and nothing happened. His friends tried to cheer him up, saying he could still be a great adventurer even without a special skill. But Rick wasn't having it. He wanted to be like Yamto, a legendary hero. He told his parents he was giving up on his dream and getting a normal job. His dad was stoked, thinking Rick was finally being realistic. Years later, Rick was just a regular guy, working as a receptionist. He'd moved on, but sometimes he'd think about his old dream. It was a bit sad, but he'd made peace with it. He had a good life, with friends and family. One day, a new girl named Alisa started working there. She was struggling with all the paperwork, so Rick helped her out. He told her to take it easy and that she'd get the hang of it. He also warned her about some monsters that had been causing trouble lately. Alisa was grateful for the advice and started getting ready for the upcoming quest. Alisa left, and then Jed walked in, all proud of himself. He just passed his B-rank exam. Rick was happy for him, but deep down, he was jealous. Jed was living his dream, while Rick was stuck in a dead-end job. That night, Rick drowned his sorrows in booze. He thought about how far he could have gone if he'd stuck to his dream. But it was too late now. He had a stable job and a boring life. He was just a regular guy, nothing special. Suddenly, there was a commotion in town. A giant troll was going on a rampage. Rick, drunk as he was, ran towards the danger to save a woman who was about to get squashed. He didn't care if he died, he just wanted to help. Just as the troll was about to attack, Reinette, a badass adventurer, showed up and sliced the troll to pieces. She told Rick he was brave, but he shouldn't risk his life like that. She could handle herself. Grateful and curious, Rick walks with Reinette, and they exchange introductions. Rick, impressed by her strength, guesses she must be a B-rank adventurer. Reinette corrects him, saying she's not B-rank. Assuming she must be A-rank instead, Rick is amazed. A-rank adventurers are rare and highly skilled. But Rionette surprises him again, revealing her S-rank badge. Rick is stunned. S-rank adventurers are legendary, often removed from local guild rosters and assigned missions directly by headquarters. Excited but nervous, Rick asks Rionette a personal question. He shares his childhood dream of becoming an adventurer and defeating Kaiser Alcipiat, the ultimate monster. He asks if she thinks he could still achieve that dream, even though he's already 30 years old. Rionette, recalling his bravery earlier, believes Rick has the courage needed to be an adventurer. However, she explains that mana reserves, a critical resource for adventurers, are extremely difficult to develop after youth. In fact, she believes it's nearly impossible for someone Rick's age to build enough mana reserves to succeed as an adventurer. Hearing this, Rick feels disheartened but appreciates Rionette's honesty. He jokes about how meeting someone as beautiful as her makes up for the bad news and casually invites her to dinner. To his surprise, Rionette agrees and suggests they meet the next day for their date. The following day, Rick feels better than ever. He's in high spirits, determined to work harder than usual. When Jed comes in boasting about his B-rank status, Rick feels no jealousy this time and even wishes his friend luck on his next quest. After work, Rick eagerly heads to meet Rionette, hoping the date might lead to something more. However, as he nears the meeting spot, Rick hears screams of panic. Monsters are attacking the town again. His date plans are ruined, and he assumes Rionette must already be fighting. Rushing to find her, Rick sees her battling the monsters with ease. Rionette tells him to stay back while she handles the situation. Within moments, the battlefield is littered with monster remains, and Rionette barely looks winded. Rionette freaked out and froze up. A monster was charging at her, and Rick was like, "Oh crap, I'm screwed." But then Jed showed up, all badass and ready to fight. He said there was a monster attack, and he and his friends were called in to help. Rick was still jealous of Jed. He wanted to be out there fighting monsters, not working a boring desk job. Rionette warned Rick that there was a dragon nearby. She was too scared to fight it because of some bad memories. Rick didn't believe her at first, but then he saw the thing. It was huge and scary. He knew they were all gonna die. The guild rules said if you see a dragon, you just run away. But some idiot had attacked it, and now they were all trapped. It was a total disaster. Rick doubts a dragon would appear in the area, but his skepticism vanishes as a massive shadow passes overhead. Looking up, Rick sees the dragon Rionette warned him about. The sight of the creature leaves him in awe and terror, as he realizes the true scale of the threat they're facing. It's hard for Rick to believe that a dragon would show up in a human town. According to the guild's rules, if any adventurer below A rank encounters a dragon, the only thing they can do is stand still and hope the dragon leaves. No one is allowed to attack it. But when a nervous magician, part of a B-rank group, gets scared, he ignores the rules and attacks the dragon, which leads to disaster. The entire B-rank group is destroyed by the dragon. Jed, a friend of Rick's, immediately orders everyone to run, but before they can escape, they find themselves trapped in a magical barrier that the dragon has set up. It seems clear that the dragon doesn't want anyone to leave alive. The situation is hopeless, and it seems like they have no chance of surviving. However, Rick surprises everyone by calmly walking towards the dragon. Jed shouts for him to stop, reminding him that as a receptionist, he has no way of fighting the dragon. But Rick, feeling that he's going to die anyway, decides he might as well face his death head-on. He'd rather die like an adventurer, fighting for a cause. Rick has been trying to ignore his dreams of being an adventurer for years, but in this moment, the fire inside him flares up again. He picks up a rock and throws it at the dragon. Of course, it does nothing to the beast, but his act of bravery gives the other adventurers courage. They all start throwing everything they can at the dragon, even though they know their efforts will likely be in vain. The dragon got pissed and started breathing fire. Jed used some kind of shield to protect everyone, but it was still rough. Everyone was hurt, but Rick got back up, determined to fight. He walked towards the dragon and said he was going to be an adventurer, no matter what. The dragon tried to step on him, but then something crazy happened. Rick's body started glowing, and he was suddenly super strong. He pushed the dragon's foot off him like it was nothing. He realized that his dormant magic had finally awakened. It was like a superpower. With his new powers, Rick fought the dragon and beat it. He punched the dragon so hard, it just exploded. Rick was exhausted, but he'd done it. He'd defeated a dragon. When he woke up, he was in a hospital bed. Reincarnation, a super powerful adventurer, had been taking care of him. She said he'd pushed his body to the limit and almost died. He was out for a week. Reincarnation explains that she had been waiting for Rick to wake up because she wants to personally invite him to join her adventuring party, Orichalcum Fist. The goal of the party is to defeat Kaiser Alcipiat, the monster Rick has always dreamed of defeating. Reincarnation had seen Rick's bravery and determination during the dragon battle, and even though he didn't have the power to win at the time, she believes he has the potential to grow stronger. She thinks Rick can fight alongside the S-rank party and become a true adventurer. Rick is overwhelmed by Reincarnation's faith in him. It's the first time anyone has supported his dream of becoming an adventurer, and he is moved to tears. With her encouragement, he feels like he can finally pursue his dreams. After recovering from his injuries, Rick takes the E-rank adventurer exam. For the first time in his life, he can proudly say that he is an adventurer. After receiving his exam results, Rick goes to visit Lynx, who is recovering from an earlier battle in the hospital. Lynx congratulates Rick on passing the exam and asks if he's still up for those drinks they had talked about earlier. Rick is happy to spend time with Lynx, but when Lynx mentions visiting Rick's house, Rick's face changes. He tries to talk Lynx out of it, but Lynx insists on coming over. Rick finally gives in and gives him directions, telling him to wear his strongest armor if he wants to survive. At first, Lynx doesn't understand why Rick is so serious about it, but when he arrives at Rick's house, he's shocked. Rick lives in a demon lord's castle. As he approaches the front door and rings the bell, Rick comes out to meet him. The inside of the castle is much nicer than Lynx had imagined. Once they enter, Rick apologizes for making Lynx come all the way out here. Lynx says it's fine, especially since he didn't encounter any monsters on the way. Rick explains that monsters never come near the castle, which makes Lynx wonder why he had to wear armor at all. Rick replies that the armor is for Lynx's protection, but not from monsters. As they enter the mansion, Reincarnation greets Lynx warmly. Lynx thanks her for her help during the earlier battle. Just then, Elise comes running down the stairs, excited to see Rick. Without thinking, she casts a massive lightning spell aimed directly at Lynx. If the spell had hit, Lynx would have been killed instantly. But Rick is quick enough to swat the spell away, and the only damage is a hole in the wall. Rick scolds Elise for using magic in the castle after he specifically told her not to. Elise, however, complains that she's bored since Rick hasn't played with her in a while. Reincarnation steps in, saying that Elise will have to pay for the damage out of her food budget. This finally gets Elise to apologize, but Rick knows she'll probably do it again as soon as she's bored. He tells Lynx to go ahead and relax while he deals with Elise. Lynx was like, "Whoa, this place is huge." He looked out the window and saw Mizet, the little dwarf guy, tinkering with some crazy weapon. Lynx walked over and said hi. Mizet was cool and let Lynx try out his weapon. It was like a supercharged laser gun or something. Lynx was blown away. Mizet was just playing around with it, like it was nothing. Then, Lynx stumbled upon Brufston's room. He couldn't believe his eyes, it was a giant library. Brufston, the big ORC, was a total bookworm. He was training Rick, but he still loved reading. Lynx asked if Brufston could train him too, and Brufston was like, "Sure, why not?" Lynx was stoked. He was gonna get trained by a badass ORC. Lynx was getting a crash course in Brufston's brutal training. He'd been pushed off a cliff with weights tied to his ankles, and he was starting to think Brufston was trying to kill him. Rick had warned him, but Lynx hadn't listened. Now he was paying the price. Later, Rick and Lynx were having tea, and Lynx couldn't help but notice how Rick looked at Reinette. It was clear that Rick cared for her deeply. Lynx, being a wise and experienced man, gave Rick some advice. He told him that age was just a number and that he should go for it. Rick was hesitant, but Lynx encouraged him. He said that sometimes, you just have to take a chance. After all, life's too short to let opportunities slip away. Later that evening, things went off the rails, not because anyone messed up, but because Reinette's too damn perfect at everything. She whips up dinner like she's running a 5-star kitchen, and the squad gathers around the table to dig in. Lynx, ever the smooth talker, starts hyping up her cooking like it's some kind of divine gift. Everyone's nodding, shoving food in their faces, and practically begging for seconds. Reinette, being all sunshine and rainbows, gets up to grab refills. As soon as she's out of earshot, Lynx leans over to Rick and throws him a curveball. "Hey, dumbass," he mutters. "Go help her or something. You are supposed to be bonding, not sitting there like a lump." Rick, clueless but eager, jumps up to follow Reinette, ready to awkwardly help and maybe impress her. With Rick gone, Lynx smirks and shifts gears. "Alright, what's the deal with his freaky little, reckless soul power?" Brufston shrugs, saying, "Yeah, that thing only kicks in when it feels like it. Total wild card. Imagine if he could actually turn it on when he needed to instead of waiting for the stars to align." Lynx snorts, "S-rank my ass. The dude's basically a walking nuke when it works, but good luck getting it to fire." Right when Rick and Reinette wander back, looking all innocent, Brufston decides it's time to get serious. He turns to Lynx. "Hey, you've got ties with Central, right? Know anything about those 6 jewels?" Lynx narrows his eyes. "The hell are you talking about?" Brufston explains, "You know, the magic rocks from the Yamto legends. They're the only way to crack open that source spiral thing and deal with Kaiser Alcipiet. Apparently, they light up every 10,000 years, and lucky us, this is their moment to shine." Lynx raises an eyebrow. "I always thought that Yamto crap was just a bunch of bedtime stories. You guys really buying into this?" Brufston nods, dead serious. Lynx groans. "Fine. I'll dig around Central, see if there's anything buried in their classified files. But don't hold your breath, alright?" Brufston, looking like he's ready to shake Lynx's hand, says, "Thanks, man. You are not completely useless." Lynx rolls his eyes, muttering something about being surrounded by idiots. The next day, Rick corners Lynx, looking all desperate. "Yo, got any more of that relationship advice crap?" he mutters, clearly still licking his wounds from whatever disaster he pulled with Reinette. Lynx sighs, already tired of Rick's nonsense. "Yeah, here's a tip, stop being a tryhard. Women hate that." Rick doesn't seem convinced, but Lynx isn't about to hold his hand through life. Later, Lynx finds himself at the Adventurers Guild, bored out of his mind, when he spots some chick mopping the floors. She looks ready to murder someone, clearly pissed she's stuck cleaning instead of killing monsters. Just as she's about to snap her mop in half, she overhears some adventurers arguing about a B-rank quest. Apparently, they need a party of 4, with at least 2 A-rank badass, and they're one short. The guild master's like, just grab whoever's standing around. Guess who's the unlucky bystander? Mop girl. They drag her into their team, and she introduces herself as Ray, looking like she regrets every decision that led to this moment. She eyes the group, an old geezer, a little kid, and an ORC, that's Brufston, obviously. She shrugs and joins, pretending like she doesn't care that her new squad looks like a bad joke. Out on the quest, Elise suddenly freezes. "Something's close," she says, like she's in a damn horror movie. "Race all, what the hell are we looking for?" Rick pipes up, all serious. "A magic stone. It's not for sale, it's way too dangerous." Ray rolls her eyes. "Bet it would fetch a fortune, though." She's clearly unimpressed and starts bragging about how she can handle any monster, even though she's F rank. Rick awkwardly admits he's an E rank, and Ray immediately thinks, wow, what a loser. Then, Elise spots it, a freaking wyvern. Ray's confidence? Gone. She's about to bolt when Brufston strolls up like it's no big deal and smacks the damn thing aside. Doesn't even kill it, just sends it flying to call for backup. Ray's freaking out now, ranting about how a wyvern swarm will kill them all. Brufston's had enough. Rick, get this whiny little brat outta here before I lose it. As Rick leads Ray away, she keeps looking back, expecting a massacre. Instead, she watches Brufston and Elise absolutely wreck the incoming wyverns, bodies dropping left and right. Just when she thinks things can't get worse, a red wyvern shows up. That's when Ray officially loses it, thinking they're all doomed. But then Rick, yes, loser E-rank Rick, walks up to the red wyvern like he's taking a goddamn stroll. Before she can yell at him for being suicidal, he one-shots the thing with a punch. A punch. Ray's jaw hits the floor. Suddenly, the guy she thought was a joke looks like the scariest dude in the room. One day at the Adventurers Guild, there's this chick, Ray, stuck mopping the damn floors. She's pissed, muttering under her breath about how she should be out there slicing up monsters, not playing maid. As she's slamming the mop around, she overhears some adventurers at the desk trying to grab a B-rank quest. Her ears perk up, and she drags her ass over to see what's up. Turns out, it's Rick and his crew, but the guild master's shooting them down. Sorry, rules are rules, he says. You need 4 people, and at least 2 of them have to be A rank or higher. Rick and the squad don't waste time whining. They're like, alright, find us a 4th, then. The guild master looks around, and guess who's standing there, trying to eavesdrop like a nosy little brat? Ray. The master points her out, and before she can protest, she's getting roped into their squad. She's side-eyeing the group, especially Brufston, the talking ORC, like, what the actual hell is this lineup? But she plays it cool, introduces herself, and decides to roll with it. Fast forward, they're on the road, and Elise, the kid of the group, suddenly freezes. Something's ahead, she says all cryptic like. Ray's curiosity gets the better of her. What are we even looking for? She asks. Rick chimes in, a magic stone. We got a tip it's around here somewhere. Ray's eyes light up. Magic stone? Bet that thing would sell for a shitload of gold. Rick shuts her down hard. We are not selling it. Stones like that attract monsters and worse if they fall into the wrong hands. Ray snorts. Please, I ain't scared of monsters. I can take anything that comes at us. She puffs up her chest, bragging about how she's gonna skyrocket from F rank to A rank in no time. Then, just to size him up, she asks Rick about his rank. He shrugs. I just got bumped to E rank. Ray holds back a laugh but only barely. This guy? E rank? At his age? What a goddamn loser. Soon, Elise spots a wyvern, exactly the type of creature they've been looking for. Ray begins to panic, as wyverns are incredibly powerful and dangerous. But to her shock, Brufston walks up to the wyvern and slaps it away like it's nothing. He purposely doesn't kill it, wanting it to call for backup. This makes Ray even more nervous because a wyvern swarm would be almost impossible to survive. Brufston, annoyed by Ray's constant complaining, tells Rick to take her somewhere safe for now. Rick leads Ray out of the forest, and as they walk, Ray expresses her disbelief at Brufston's actions. She can't believe he intentionally attracted the wyverns. Just as she finishes talking, they hear the sound of wyvern corpses crashing to the ground, as Brufston and Elise are taking down the creatures. Ray is stunned by the sight. As she's processing what just happened, a red wyvern appears, and Ray panics again. Red wyverns are even stronger than regular wyverns, and they're tough enough to challenge even A-rank adventurers. Ray, fearing for her life, suggests they should run, since she's only F-rank and Rick is E-rank. But Rick simply walks up to the red wyvern and, in one punch, blows its head off, killing it instantly. Ray is left speechless, completely amazed by Rick's strength. The next day, Ray is still thinking about everything that happened. She's sitting in the guild when the guild master comes up to her and expresses his relief that she made it out of the situation safely. He tells her that Orchalcum Fist, the team Rick is part of, is the strongest party in the entire continent. All of its members are S-rank adventurers, which is why they were able to handle the wyverns so easily. Ray is inspired by this and decides that she wants to become strong enough to join their ranks one day. Determined, she hands her broom to the guild master, intending to start training immediately. However, the guildmaster isn't thrilled about this decision since sweeping the floors is her actual job. Meanwhile, after returning from their wyvern hunt, Rick and his team manage to retrieve a magic jewel from the wyvern's den. Mizit uses magic to pinpoint the location of the next jewel they need to find, and it's located in Herotopia, a large city known for its coliseums and powerful fighters. Years back, in some sunburnt hellhole mostly made of sand, this absolute unit named King Alexander Herotopia decided to slap together a kingdom and call it Hertopia. Dude didn't stop there, though. He built a massive ass coliseum and threw down the gauntlet, inviting every badass from across the land to come fight. And get this, the guy himself jumped in the ring and wrecked everyone. No losses. Ever. King Alex became the undefeated champ, and the Coliseum made his kingdom blow up in popularity. Now? The guy's a freaking legend, immortalized in statues, stories, and probably some bad tattoos. Brufston, one of Rick's meathead buddies, pipes up one day like, "Man, I wish I could have fought Alexander. Would have been epic." Brufston, ever the realist, is like, "Yeah, sure, but..." The guy would have clapped your cheeks so hard Hertopia would have turned back into a desert. Anyway, the squad decides it's time to hit up Hertopia for their next lead on those fancy jewels. Ray's still riding high after watching Brufston and Rick destroy wyverns and has decided she's gonna train her ass off to stop being a walking L. Meanwhile, the rest of the team preps for whatever chaos is waiting. They roll into Hertopia, where being a fighter is like being a celebrity. The city's buzzing about the upcoming King of Fists tournament. Apparently, it's the event of the year. Brufston's hyped, ready to throw down, but Rick keeps reminding everyone, "Focus, guys. We are here for the jewel." Problem is, every time they try to talk to someone, the locals take one look at Brufston, the giant talking Oasi, and bolt like they've seen death itself. After striking out for the millionth time, Rick sighs. Let's just hit up the town hall. Someone there's gotta know something. But just as they're about to leave, they spot some punk harassing a girl in the alley. Rick, trying to be a hero, starts walking over, but Brufston steps in first. The guy harassing the girl doesn't back down, and in the dumbest move of his life, he actually challenges Brufston to a fight. Brufston's all smiles. "Oh, a fight? Sure thing, buddy. Let's take this to the alley." Cue about 10 seconds of silence, followed by a loud crack. Brufston strolls back out dragging the guy's unconscious body like it's a sack of potatoes. Somehow, the dude survived, but he's not the same. Now he's all polite and introduces himself as Gold, acting like a reformed choir boy. "I've turned over a new leaf," he says, while Brufston just grunts and drops him like yesterday's trash. The girl, Militia, introduces herself too, thanking Brufston for stepping in. Brufston, ever the practical one, pulls out the red jewel they've been looking for. "You two seen this before?" Gold scratches his head. "Looks familiar, but I can't place it." Militia nods. "Yeah, I've seen it somewhere," but then a loud-ass parade rolls through, cutting her off. Turns out it's for the King of Fists tournament, and Gold's all hyped, like, "Yo, it's Kevin Wolf. 5-time champ." Militia's swooning, pointing out Kevin's champion belt, which, surprise, surprise, has a jewel that looks just like the one the team's hunting for. Kevin's riding through the streets like he's the second coming, flexing for the crowd. After the parade, he heads to his gym, where the owner's all apologetic about the publicity circus. Kevin just laughs it off. "It's whatever, man, but honestly, I'm bored. Winning every year is too easy. I need someone who can actually give me a challenge." Little does he know, he's about to get more than he bargained for. Rick and Reinhardt stroll into the gym like they own the place, but before they can even get a word in, Kevin's eyes lock onto them. The champ knows right away these two aren't your average fanboys. The gym owner, trying to act all tough, is like, "Yo, you can't just barge in here uninvited." Rick cuts him off with, "Relax, Gramps. We are not here to gawk at your boy." He explains they're adventurers looking for a gem, but before he can get all sentimental about it, Brufston steps in and drops the bomb, "I want the damn belt." The gym owner's face twists, and he's ready to call security. "Thieves, huh? Think you're gonna waltz in here and snatch the champ's belt?" Brufston just stares him down, his voice like gravel, "We don't want the belt, old man. Just the jewel on it. It belonged to someone from our crew. We'll even replace it for you. No harm, no foul." Kevin, leaning against the wall, raises a hand to stop the drama. Chill, he says, his eyes narrowing. The ORC's telling the truth. But here's the deal, big guy, you want the jewel? You gotta earn it. That belt isn't just some bling, it's the pride of Herotopia. You want it? Beat me in the King of Fists tournament. Brufston doesn't even flinch. Fine by me, he says, turning to leave. Rick, frustrated, hisses, that's it? You are just walking out. Brufston shrugs like it's no big deal. I win the tournament, I get the belt, I get the jewel. Simple. They leave the gym, and the owners left sweating bullets, realizing that trying to force them out might have ended with the whole damn building leveled. Kevin, smirking, says, that ORC? He's hiding some real scary shit. And the quiet one? Rick? Don't let that chill attitude fool you. The guy's built like a tank under that shirt. Outside, Brufston lays out the game plan. Here's how it goes. We all enter the tournament, but the prelims are split between the east and west gates. You two, he says, pointing at Rick and Reinette, head to the west. I'll handle the east. That way, we don't end up knocking each other out in the early rounds. Rick raises an eyebrow. You sure you'll be good on your own? You are not exactly blending in, big guy. Brufston just smirks. Already handled it. Gold's gonna be my guide. He owes me after I knocked the attitude out of his skull. Reinette nods. Alright, let's do it. But don't get too comfy. Brufston laughs, a deep, rumbling sound. Looking forward to it. And just like that, the squad splits up, each of them gearing up to wreck anyone who gets in their way. The King of Fists tournament isn't ready for what's about to hit it, an ORC with the strength of a god, a swordsman with a power no one sees coming, and a healer who's way too good at breaking bones when she's pissed. All eyes might be on the champion, but Herotopia's about to learn what happens when adventurers crash the party. After a long day of training and preparation, Rick and Reinette congratulate Angelica for winning her 10th match, which qualifies her to enter the preliminaries for the King of Fists tournament. Angelica's accomplishment motivates Rick even more to push himself in his own matches. However, Angelica is still perplexed by Rick's goal of completing 100 matches in just 10 days. To her, it seems almost impossible. Rick, on the other hand, doesn't understand why it's such a big deal. Angelica points out the main challenge: you can only register for one match per day at each venue. While Herotopia has more than 100 venues, some are extremely remote, situated as far as 1,000 kilometers away from other venues. Traveling between venues in such a short amount of time and managing to complete 100 matches seems like an incredibly difficult task. Despite this, Rick remains confident, saying that he will figure it out. Before Rick can continue his plans, he and Reinette need to take a test, similar to a promotion exam at the Adventurers Guild. When Rick enters the arena for his test, the examiner explains that he will be facing a mock battle to assess his strength. His opponent will be one of the newly recruited fighters, someone who has won every match so far. However, regardless of whether Rick wins or loses, as long as he meets certain criteria, he will still pass the exam. The doors of the arena swing open, and a confident voice rings out. The fighter entering introduces herself as The Flash, boasting about her incredible speed and warning her next opponent to watch out. However, her confidence falters as soon as she spots Rick, and she's taken aback. It's none other than Angelica, who Rick recognizes from their previous encounters. She's surprised to see him here and wonders why he's participating in the test, though she also realizes that it's bad luck for her to be facing him in a mock battle. Despite the fact that losing doesn't really have any consequences, Angelica is determined to maintain her undefeated streak. She decides to go all out and attempt to overwhelm Rick with her speed. But as soon as she charges, she trips and falls flat on the ground. She assumes it's just nerves, but when it happens again, she realizes it's not her nerves, it's Rick doing something. Looking up at Rick, she's confused, and he calmly explains that he's been practicing a new skill over the last few months. Rick, the cocky bastard, couldn't help but show off his latest trick, something he called the 8 secret arts of going easy. Sounds fancy, right? Nah, it's just him sweeping people's legs like a damn show-off. first move? Constantly tripping Angelica up, making her eat dirt over and over. She's pissed as hell, calling it insulting, but Rick just shrugs, like, bruh, you ain't even hurt. Chill. He's doing it so fast that even Angelica, with all her speed and pride, can't do jack about it. She tries to back up, keep her distance, but nope, her ass is back on the ground again. Angelica's fuming, but she ain't giving up. Rick, the smug jerk, smirks and goes, fine, guess I'll actually fight you for real now. But the second he says that, Angelica just throws in the towel. She's had enough of his BS. Rick looks kinda let down, but also like, whatever, I'm still the man. He's already hyped to go sign up for the tournament prelims. Just as he's about to bounce, Angelica storms up to him, bowling like a kid who lost their candy. Why do you always gotta beat me so damn easily? It's not fair. Rick, thinking Reincarnation might roll up and catch the wrong vibe, is like, yo, chill. Let's grab some food or something. Talk it out. They hit up a restaurant nearby, which, surprise surprise, is owned by Militia's parents. Militia's there too, giving them the royal treatment, smiling like a little angel. While they're munching, Militia starts blushing like a schoolgirl and admits she's got a thing for Bruffston. Rick's like, well, hate to break it to you, but my guy's registering over on the east side, so you're not gonna see him anytime soon. Militia looks crushed but bounces, leaving Rick, Reincarnation, and Angelica to keep talking. Angelica's still grilling Rick. Why the hell are you even in Herotopia? You are already crazy strong, what's the point? Rick, nonchalant as ever, goes, I'm gonna win the tournament. Angelica's jaw practically hits the floor. You are joking, right? You do realize qualifying is hell, don't you? She breaks it down, 10 wins just to enter the prelims, and most fighters only manage, like, 2 wins a month. Rick just smirks and drops the bombshell, I've scheduled 100 matches a day for the next 10 days. Angelica's about to lose her mind. Next day, Rick struts into the arena for his first match. His opponent? Some sketchy dude named Grit. The coordinator warns Rick, yo, this guy's dirty, might be hiding a weapon. Watch your back. Rick takes one look at Grit and shrugs it off. Easy win, he thinks. Match starts, and bam, Grit pulls out some illegal crap called an impact stone from his shoe. Dude punches with enough force to wreck boulders. Crowds gasping, a dust cloud explodes, and everyone thinks Rick's toast. But when the dust clears, Rick's standing there without a scratch, and Grit's elbows are wrecked. The guy's screaming like, what the hell? Rick, as usual, had gone easy on him, knocking him out with just the air pressure from a missed punch. The crowd loses their minds. Rick walks off like it's just another Tuesday. Later, Rick and Reincarnation head to watch Angelica fight. She earns her nickname, The Flash, by absolutely demolishing her opponent, kicking the poor guy into a wall like a rag doll. She starts gloating, but Rick cuts her off. Yeah, cool story, but I gotta bounce. Green Hill Venue's calling. Angelica laughs in his face. You are an idiot. That's 1,000 kilometers away. You'll never make it in time. Rick just smirks. Who said anything about a carriage? I'm running. Angelica thinks Rick is crazy for attempting to run such a long distance, but the moment Rick starts running, he disappears in a cloud of dust. She's shocked by his speed and realizes that she's no longer the fastest person around. As Rick speeds off, Angelica feels that she doesn't deserve her title of The Flash anymore. While she's still reeling from this realization, Reincarnation asks Angelica if she would like to watch Rick's match. Angelica says she would love to, but she knows there's no way she could catch up to Rick. Reincarnation offers to take her there instead, but Angelica is reluctant. She doesn't have a good feeling about it. Before Angelica can say anything, Reincarnation picks her up and starts jumping from rooftop to rooftop at high speed. Angelica is terrified and pleads for Reincarnation to go back to the ground, but Reincarnation doesn't want to take the roads because they're too complicated. Eventually, they make it to the arena, but Angelica is so dizzy from the ride that she misses the entire match. Rick, on the other hand, says he didn't do as well as he hoped because he still needs to practice making his attacks non-lethal. However, he has no time to worry about it now because he has to rush to his next match. Angelica is exhausted and doesn't want to go through the terrifying experience of being carried by Reincarnation again, but Reincarnation already grabs her and starts jumping across town. Over the next few days, Rick keeps winning his matches with ease, while Angelica suffers from severe motion sickness from all the roof hopping. Finally, after 4 days, Rick has qualified for the preliminaries by winning all his matches, and the next step is the league. If you have watched the video, please like the video and share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time in another anime plot. Stay tuned for more exciting adventures.